Hello all, welcome to A Fistful of Dice. I'm Matt, and today we're going to be starting a new series of videos which I will call Tabletop Tales. Tabletop Tales is going to be a way for me to sort of tell stories about disastrous things or triumphant things that have happened at the gaming table. We're going to start off with a doozy. This is story of the worst Star Wars RPG I have ever played. Okay, so, to preface this a little bit, so I was a freshman in college, and prior to going to college, I had made contact with this guy on Facebook, and I'm going to keep names of it as much as I can, but made contact with this guy on Facebook who was also into gaming, and he was sort of contacting everyone that he saw that was going to the university and who was into Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop gaming. He was trying to get a gaming group together, basically. So me and this guy were kind of messaging back and forth for pretty much the whole summer. And finally school time came around, and we met up a couple times and kind of made plans to get a game going. And at this time, the Star Wars role-playing game Saga Edition was coming out from Wizards. And we've been hearing good things about it. At the time, Wizards was saying, this is a preview for 4th edition. Of course, that turned out to not be true, but we were pretty stoked on this. And we decided that we were going to get a Saga Edition group together. At this time, I was really not feeling game mastering. I immediately said I did not want a game master. Part of this was because I didn't really know any of the players, and I felt a little uncomfortable joining the group. But the reason was I was just really hankering to play. I really wanted to play, so I had no idea for a character. So we decided that we were going to go out in search of a game master. This guy that I met on Facebook, let's call him Steve. Steve said, hey, I have a friend who game masters. He games a lot. He's a big gamer. He's really into Star Wars. He'll be perfect. I said, cool, let's get him on board. What Steve failed to mention was that his friend, whose name is Don. So Steve and Don. Don was a big LARPer. He was too into gaming, and actually, a year after this story took place, he left the university because he never went to class because he stayed in his dorm room and played World of Warcraft. So he never went to class. So Steve says, I'll get Don on board, I'll have Don bring a couple of his friends, you get a couple of your friends, we'll get an awesome group together. I was like, dude, sweet, that's awesome. I have not gamed in a couple years, this is going to be great. So, bought the core rule book, rolled up my character, who was a Rhodian gunslinger. His name was Gavik, and he was awesome. I went on to play him in a good Star Wars RPG campaign. Got everything rolling. We reserved a room on campus, and the time came for the first session. So I go up and I meet Don. Don, pretty large guy, and he's got his pants pulled up to about here on his chest. And as I meet him, he's got his hand down his pants adjusting his junk, and I'm like, okay, off to a great start. Did not shake his hand. But, you know, we met, he seems nice enough, you know, he seems like your stereotypical master. But, an open mind, I'm itching to game, so I'm good to go. He's brought 2 of his friends along, and I'm not going to assign them names because it's not really important, but one of them was a nice enough guy, just kind of weird, a little socially awkward, and he was playing a really super hot, like, Twi'lek Jedi, and so he was kind of, like, being weird with her, and, like, it was kind of weird, like, having this guy roleplay this, like, sultry, like, Jedi, and it was really obvious that he was just, like, you know, nerding out over there, and, like, anyway, it was weird. And the other guy was ex-military, really, really intense guy, like no nonsense, nothing is funny guy, and he was playing a medic, like a field medic. So he was soldier class, and he used like a battle rifle, and he was like really good at healing. And so he mentioned offhand, and this is important later, he said he's also good with explosives. We're like, okay. So at this point, I brought a friend along too, and I can go ahead and say his name because we're still friends, David. And David was playing a smuggler, a Twi'lek smuggler. I was playing a Rhodian gunslinger. We had a Twi'lek Jedi. We had a human noble. And we had a human soldier. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had 5 players and 1 game master. So the session starts, and it starts off in typical fashion where we're at the bar, and we meet, and we get commissioned for this job. When did this all take place? I think it took place between the prequels and the original trilogy. Yep. And we get this job where we're going to have to go aboard a Star Destroyer. We're going to sneak aboard a Star Destroyer. And we end up like fighting some stormtroopers in the bar and getting into some trouble. You know, typical like first encounter type stuff. And everything's going okay. I'm kind of not meshing very well with any of the players. And I'm kind of just like, well, you know, it'll get better. So we secure a transport up to the Star Destroyer, and we have to basically sneak aboard. And I can't remember what all we were doing, but we got aboard this Star Destroyer, and we fight on board the Star Destroyer, and everything goes pretty well. We end up like killing a general guy, and now we have to escape the Star Destroyer. So we escape the Star Destroyer, and we go down to the planet. Now here's where things go south really, really, really quickly. So we get down to the planet, and it's like a swamp planet. And we spend the next 2 hours out of game walking through the swamp. And it literally, this is what was happening. The GM goes, okay, you walk for 30 more minutes. Roll a d20. Roll 20. He says, you get attacked by vines. We're like, okay. So you fight vines. And then he's like, okay, you walk for another 30 minutes. Roll this. You fall in a quicksand pit. I'm like, oh, okay. I like, deal with that. And then we like keep walking. We did that for like an hour and a half or 2 hours. It was just so mundane and boring. I was just bored out of my mind by the end of it. At this point, we get to our ship. So we've like traipsed through the swamp for no reason. No progress was made here. There was no point to, it was just busy work. He was just wasting time in the swamp. We get to a ship, and there's Mynocks on the ship. And I'm like, okay, I would like to shoot the Mynocks off the ship. And he goes, well, you're going to hit the ship. Okay, I will go up on top of the ship. So I go in the ship, and I go up topside. I come up, and I'm like, how many Mynocks are there? And he's like, there are 6 Mynocks that you can see. Power cables. I'm like, alright, I go up to the first one, and I try to kick it. You know, kick it off. He goes, okay, you know, roll your melee attack. So I roll, and he's like, you miss. I miss? He's like, yeah, you miss. I go, isn't it like stationary, like hooked on? Shouldn't I just be like coup de grace-ing this thing? Because I attach the power cables sitting still. I have all the time in the world to put my boot up and stomp it down. He goes, no, you just miss. Okay, I try again. I roll. He goes, you miss. Okay, I try again. I roll 1. He fall off the ship. I'm like, we are in the Star Wars galaxy right now. where there's intrigue and danger everywhere. We spent the last 2 hours walking through a swamp, and now I'm freaking falling off my ship to kick Mynocks off of it. Really? We decided we're just going to end the session and come back next week because we're all kind of frustrated. So we're like, alright, we'll just come back next week. It'll be good. In the session, me, Steve, and David are kind of talking afterwards, and we're like, well, it's okay. You know, it was actually pretty awful, but, you know, hopefully, you know, growing pains, you know, we're still getting used to each other. Maybe next week will be better. So we come back the next Saturday for our second session, and, you know, Don's there in his ass, you know, and, you know, he's like, hey, guys, and we're like, hey, Don. He's down, and we're kind of dreading this, like, not looking forward to it at all, which is not good, but still going into it with an open mind. This one was considerably shorter, and it's the last session I would ever play with this group. We, once again, are boarding a Imperial starship. It was like Dreadnought or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but we get aboard the starship, and we're fighting stormtroopers, the usual, and the mission involves going to get an officer. It was very similar to the first session. I don't know why both sessions were so similar, but we're going to fight an Imperial officer, and on the way, we come to find that there were, like, Imperial Knights or something like that. They're basically, like, not Jedi, but they were Imperial soldiers that had Force capabilities and actually wielded lightsabers, but they weren't Jedi. So, I don't know. Not a big fan of them because it sort of, like, takes away from the whole, there's only one Jedi left, and it's you, Luke. It's like, no, there's actually a ton, according to the expanded universe, but fighting these guys, and they're pretty badass. We end up, the fight takes us into like a storage room. It's like a cargo hold, and we're fighting in this cargo hold, and we're all in there except for the medic. The medic is still out in the hallway. And we're fighting, and it comes to the medic's turn. The medic goes, I throw a thermal detonator in the room and close the door. And we're like, what? We're in there. You're going to hit us. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm doing what my character would do. Like, okay. Now, this takes a little bit of explaining. In Star Wars Saga Edition, there are frag grenades, and then there are thermal detonators. Grenades are your typical, you know, area of effect, sending shrapnel and fire out in every direction. They're effective, but, you know, usually they won't wipe out a whole room of people. Thermal detonators. There's a reason when Jabba's palace freaks out when he pulls out the thermal detonator in Return to the Jedi. This will clear a room like that. We didn't even know he had one because thermal detonators are really expensive in Saga Edition. In fact, I think they're like, yeah, it's like 1,500 credits. Got one of these things. And the GM goes, cool. I'm like, dude, no way. And we're all just, like, hoping that he, like, fudges the roll or something. He doesn't. He crits. He crits on the attack. It lands exactly where he wants it to do, and it does double damage. So he throws the thermal detonator. It lands smack in the middle of the room, and it does something insane like 10d6 damage or something like that. It kills every single person in the room in one turn. Every single person. Total party kill except for this medic guy. At this point, we're livid. We're just like, dude, what the hell? You know, why would you do that? He's just like, it's what my character would do. It's what my character would do. And we're looking at the GM like, are you going to make a call here? Like, are we all dead for real, or are we going to redo this? And he was, I guess that ends the session. If everyone could please roll a new character except for you, medic guy, and we'll start again next week. What ended up happening is we called the Game Master and told him that we weren't going to game anymore, that the gaming group was done. In actuality, we just met without him and without his two friends. Later on, we went to play a really, really fun Star Wars RPG campaign with the same characters, this time without the swamp traipsing and Mynock kicking and thermal detonator party killing. It was a lot more fun. This, like, experience almost put me off of gaming because it was the first time I gamed in like 2 years, and it was just so disheartening and so frustrating, and I hated pretty much every minute of it that I almost didn't game after that. I was almost too disheartened to carry on. But thankfully I did, and I had a lot of good experiences in that gaming group in college. And here I am today still gaming, so it just goes to show that just because you have one horrific experience with one really bad DM and one really bad group doesn't mean that all gaming is like that. You've got to find the group that works for you and the game that works for you. So anyway, so I hope you enjoyed my little story about thermal detonators and Mynocks and such. And there'll be more tabletop tales to come. So thanks for watching, and happy gaming, all.